Hi, today I'm going to do some fabric sculpting for you. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I woke up this morning and I felt a little experimental. So I'm going to share some of my favorite techniques, but also try a little bit of, a few new things to kind of stretch myself a bit. I am working on a piece of silk dupion. This is all creased because I hand dyed it and I dried it all scrunched up because I love this pleated look. This is my number one favorite Gutermann cotton. It's color 121, and I use reels and reels and reels of it. If you purchase my beginner's tambour kit, you'll get this in the kit with the mushroom organza because I think it's a really beautiful neutral. And because I like the soft pinky palette, this seems to blend with everything, so I don't have to change my thread all the time. I do use darker ones as well, but it's my go-to number one thread. I've got a selection of different scrap fabrics. This is some hand-dyed silk chiffon. I've got some hand-painted padge, and I don't know if you can see this in the camera. Oh, there you go, a little bit. It's actually got a little bit of iridescent glitter paint all the way through it. It's very soft and beautiful. I've got some hand painted silk organza. This was a pale green. It was actually this color underneath before. Oh, the camera's not really picking that up, but it was this pale green underneath before I painted it the dusty pink. And I've got some scraps. So this is the scrap that I cut my elements out of, and then I keep all of it and I don't iron this. I leave it scrunched up. And the reason for that is I find it more useful when it's scrunched. I have ironed the other fabrics except for the green. I might do some leaves with this, but then again, I might not. Something else I've got is a piece of silk organza. Let me lie this down so you can see. There you go. So I've done a stamp on here with a fabric stamp pad for fabrics, and then I've painted it as well. Now I might use this, I might not. I just found it in my scrap drawer when I was pulling all these fabrics out and thought, oh, you know what? I quite like the look of that. Now I've just unthreaded my needle and lost my thread accidentally, so that's okay. I'll do it again while I'm talking to you. So the favorite 1.1, sorry, 121, and I'm using a needle. It's not too big, not too small. It's just a normal embroidery or sharp, whatever you want to call it. It's probably got a slightly bigger eye than I would normally use for this. In fact, no, that one's a bit short. This little needle here that's just in my pin cushion, I feel is a little too short and a little too thin for this technique. You want not a long needle, but I like to be able to use the needle to sculpt with. So the short ones don't work quite so well for me. All right. Now, I had a vision in my head of doing some sculpting where we literally start like this, fold it back, and stitch. And then I thought, originally I was going to do that in organza, and then I thought, I'm not sure that's going to look great. So that's when I pulled out the patch. Now I'm just going to grab some fabric scissors. One of the things I love about fabric sculpting, or that I have learned, is not to cut out beautiful shapes. I rip when I can. That didn't quite rip as I wanted it to, but all the joys of experimental. And I'll cut kind of a V shape, but very, very rough. All right, so I've got something. You can see it's not perfect. It's fraying. I love fraying. In fact, I'll go along this top edge and fray it now with my fingernails. So I'm rubbing my thumbnail along the edge of that to try and distort it and fray it on the edges because I love that softness. This fabric is not behaving as well as I would like it to, but then that's kind of the joy of fabric sculpting. You just really never know what you're going to get. Now, sometimes I'll have a basic flower pattern with a leaf and a stem or something on there. I haven't today. I'm going to have to swap needles. That one keeps coming undone. I'm just going to wing it and see what happens. Sometimes when I'm teaching online with a one-on-one student, I just grab whatever's on my desk and little bits and demonstrate, and I often find they're the most interesting thing. So I'm envisioning my first petal kind of going in here. So you can see, and actually you can start on the top because we're not going to see the knot, that I'm just going to do a couple of little anchoring stitches here. Then what I'm going to do is come up again and I'm going to scrape the edge right into the middle. Think of it as a gather. All right. And then I'm going to scrape this edge into the middle as well. All right. And see, I've got this lovely little pucker at the bottom. I think this fabric is going to behave quite beautifully. But honestly, with fabric sculpting, you never know. So I'm just doing a little stitch to anchor my little gathers. Now I'm parking my needle. It's over here. It's underneath, but it's not just dangling, or because I'm using a single thread, it's going to come undone. Ooh, look at this. I'm feeling excited already. So there are different ways we could go. I could come up and bring my needle on that edge and literally create a seam by tucking that under and then come back in the middle, or I can leave the raw edge and I could just start stitching, but I think I liked that. So I'm going to envision where I want it shape-wise. So I'm bringing my needle up there. I'm taking my needle through the thread a couple of millimeters from the edge so that when I take it back in about the same hole, hopefully it's going to tuck under, which it did, but I probably should have started a little bit lower to get that look. So no big deal. We take it out. This is why well, it's not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons why I work with a single thread. We don't need a double thread for this. It's better to have the softness of a single thread, but it also means you can do a bit of reversing when required. Right, now, do I want to do that? Yeah, let's give it another go. All right, so come up a little bit lower this time. Same technique, come in a couple of mils from the edge of the fabric. Take your needle down in the same hole as previously and encourage it to tuck in underneath. That's a little bit better. Now, the reason I paint a lot of fabrics is because can you see this beautiful ombre? This looks like a magnolia to me already. So I've got this creamy white and then I've got the darker pink edge and a really soft graduation between those colors, which really I just love. All right, so I'm envisioning where the next, I'm having a great day, Shaky. You're going to spend your time watching me thread my needle. I do apologize. It just keeps coming out. All right, same thing again, coming in a couple of mils from the edge, finding that thread underneath, going in approximately the same hole, and then helping it to tuck under. It's not. All right, I'm going to stop and undo because now I'm just getting waves, with a raw edge, and I don't like that. So no need to go to all this trouble. Take that all out, and I will just sculpt without worrying about tucking the edges in. All right, so I'm taking my needle down in the same spot. I'm going to position my petal where I think I want it, and now I'm just going to start scraping. So just gently at first, I kind of move around the shape or the element of the petal. Oh yeah, look at that. I get super excited. You'll have to excuse me when I do fabric sculpting. It just really lights me up, makes my heart sing. All right, a little bit of a different angle here. Ooh, yep, love that. But don't love the way that's just curling up. So I'm going to come back and do another little stitch here. All right, jumping around a little bit. We'll jump up here. Oops, over here. Look at this baby. Oh, I love it. Love it, love it, love it. All right, now let's get this through this straight edge. Pull that in. Woo! Love, love, love it. All right, I have to jump over here. I don't want to disturb this bit too much. And I think it's a little bit of a too big a jump to go from here to here. I've got no interfacing on the back of this fabric because I just pulled a little scrap out. So I'm going to do a French knot to finish off. I no longer flip my frame over repeatedly while doing embroidery, and that came from years and years of working on really large tambour frames when it was just frankly a hassle to turn it over. So I have found over the years that doing a French knot is more than enough to hold things in place. Now use that with discretion and wisdom. If you've got really thick fabric, you're going to possibly need to turn it over. But when you're working with fine silks, it's really not necessary. All right, so this time, excuse me. Oh, look what's going on today. Seriously. So sorry, everyone. This time I'm not going to scrape. So I've come up a couple of mils in, and I'm just going to look underneath and find that spot where my needle came out of the fabric and put, oh, look at that. See, you can't make this stuff up. It just happens. And now I'm going to do the same here because I'm not loving that raw edge there. Take it in underneath, and now I'm going to have to do a couple more because it's all misbehaving. I always get excited when, oh yeah, there you go, when I fabric sculpt. One, because I never know what I'm going to get. And two, if something goes astray, like you do a stitch and it doesn't quite look pleasing to you, I just keep stitching away, poking and prodding, scraping and stitching until I get something that I do like. All right, so I just did a French knot there. I'm going to do another one here and scrape some of that raw edge in. Voila, my first petal, and I love, love, love it. All right, let's get rid of some of that. I'm not going to do anything else to this petal at this stage. After I've got my other petals on and the composition's looking a bit more finished, I may come back and refine it in some way. Now, my big decision is, do I change to chiffon right away and do two petals? Maybe it's just going to be a giant magnolia on here and nothing much else. Or do I do another of the Page silk and then do, oh, it's all good, all good. Don't feel drawn at all to that one. Sometimes I use that to stuff underneath as well if I need to pad something out. So option number one, is it going to be the same fabric again? Or option number two? I'm right on the fence, but I think if I'm going to only have 3 petals, I think I'll have that as my center and the other 2 petals in chiffon rather than, I call this auditioning. I'm just auditioning the fabrics. Yeah, no, I'm going chiffon for sure. And this is a really good piece to show you. When selecting, you can see that there's darker marks and areas here, and there's lighter area here. So think about that. This, I had the lighter area at the base and the darker area at the top. So if I was going to use this fabric again, I probably wouldn't cut this here unless I wanted an all light petal. I would move up a little bit so that I was cutting it maybe here and using the light petal here so that I had a similar petal. Now, if you're wanting to do shading and highlighting and you wanted this petal to be lighter or you wanted that petal to be darker, then that's what you would think about, and that's where you would cut your fabric. Don't think about wasting it because all of this fabric that I'm working with today is all scrap from other projects. So I very rarely find anything wasted. Okay, so I'm going to cut. Now, because this is chiffon, I'm cutting quite a large piece because once I start sculpting, it will disappear quite quickly. And I'm going to do that same technique where I bunch it up underneath because it gives this beautiful start to the flower. Yeah, I think this is good. And once again, I'm going to distress the edge by doing a little fraying with my thumb before we start. If fraying's not your thing, if that freaks you out, then that's okay. Don't do it. You can, if you know you like neat edges, you can do a turned applique edge on the end, whatever you like. There are no rules. Well, there's a few guidelines to fabric sculpting, but really generally no rules. See, I just look at that. Look at the organicness of that. I just love it. And I've got a little bit of a rolled edge here on the side from whatever I used it with in the last project. And I'm going to keep that because I like it. All right. More 121 being threaded up. Gutermann is by far my brand of thread of choice. When I learnt tambour at Hand and Lock, they love Filigante, the French thread. I bought all the colours while I was there, and I'm sorry, I just don't love it. I still use it occasionally, but Gutermann is definitely my number one go-to. Now I'm starting this one just a tad lower, not quite as, oh, maybe around a centimetre lower. So generally, no, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. I was going to say generally I don't start each petal from the same apex at the bottom, but sometimes I do, like if it's an iris. Anyway, let's try that again. Now, because this is a chiffon, I'm going to scrape from the side, come up in the same hole, scrape from the side again. But because it is so fine, see, I've got this little bit here. I am going to scrunch that up with a stitch or two. And the reason for that is it's going to give a little bit of padding underneath. All right, not a lot. And it also just makes it look neat. Sometimes I leave that little point and that can look nice too. But today I'm just going to do that. Got threads everywhere, honestly. Okay, Now I want this to overlap this one a little bit. If you're really unsure where to go, I don't do this much anymore, but I used to do what I call fabric acupuncture. And I would get little pins and I would go like this and, just kind of map it out, have a little look. Oh, yeah, I want it to turn this way, or oh, yeah, I want it to come over here. I really don't do that often anymore, but when I first did this technique and I was developing it, I did actually do that quite a lot. So I've decided to come up right here, a little bit away from the bottom because I don't want to squash that beautiful roll down. And the reason I'm coming up here is because it's right where the previous petal finishes. So that is an ideal place for a scrape and stitch. All right, same here, coming up right on the edge of the previous petal. And we will loop this. So when I say loop, I'm not scraping, I'm going over the edge of the fabric, I'm going down into the same hole, and it just pulls it in beautifully like that. I'm not coming up here, which is where my mind told me to go next. I'm going to come over here instead because I don't want to get too restrictive by the way that falls, and I'm loving the way that falls there. So let's see. All right, I don't like that at all. So that one's coming out. So if you need to reverse, that's completely normal in this technique. Again, it's why one of the reasons why we're using a single thread. Really can't make mistakes. You just keep stitching and undoing and reversing until you get something you do like. Except I didn't take it out of the silk. All right, let's try that again. I'll go down to the wrong side of the fabric and we'll reassess. I do want that to have some movement over here. I like the way that is sitting there. So maybe I'm going to do what I said I wasn't going to do. And I am going to come over here. Going to scrape that edge in. Yeah, that's quite beautiful. I like this shape here. Now I'll jump over here. Scrape. I think with the chiffon, I'm scraping too hard. I had to scrape the page because it's thicker in a little bit more. The chiffon, I'm not needing to, and what I mean by that is I'm not needing to scrape here. I'm just the distance of scraping because the fabric is so much softer. It's very, very fine silk chiffon. I'm not needing to pull it in. Oh yeah, that's good. All right, now again, I think this is possibly a little too puffy, but I'm going to leave it at this stage until I've done my next one, finishing off with a French knot, coming back up to the right side of the fabric in the same spot and cutting it off. Make sure you do not cut your fabric. I think I've got just enough thread left in the needle to do the next chiffon petal on the other side. I loved painting this fabric. I remember the day I did it because I had to paint it outside. Luckily, it was February and super hot in Australia. And I had I had it hanging on a tree in order to, it was a big piece. I did a massive scarf piece out of this. All right, now we have to think about where I'm going to start the next petal. I'm going to use this ragged edge. Can you see that on the fabric? I might fray it a little bit so that but I'll probably fray more on the sides. I just like that edge there. So working out my spacing, do I want it to come underneath that one a little bit? do I want it to come higher than that one? I definitely don't want to come higher. I'm too close to the edge of my hoop to navigate that. And I also think from a composition point of view that it actually looks more balanced coming from under there. Something else, I think I'm going to leave it this way because I like the way that's going to flare out, but you can also audition which way you're going to stitch your fabric. That would actually work quite well here because we've got another point that would sit, you know, here, but my intuition tells me I'm going to do it this way this time. Okay, so thinking about my starting point, doing an anchoring stitch, coming up, the fabric is going to sit this way. Once again, scraping in from my edge, coming up in approximately the same hole, scraping in from the other edge. And now let's see I've got this nice little tail there. Sometimes I just leave that tail because it gives a nice little shadow, and like the other one I showed you, sometimes I scrunch it up to make a bit of padding. So just so that I can show you the difference between the two ways, I'll leave the tail. Now I'm coming up right here because this is definitely somewhere where a spot that I want to anchor the new petal into. One, because I've got a little bit of an untidy raw edge there. Don't know if you can actually see that. From the previous petal, that's where I finished that one off. So I'll come up there. I'm just going to come in a little bit close to the edge and loop it over. Let's see what we get. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's good. All right, jumping up again. I'm going to do the same technique, looping it over the edge of the fabric, not scraping. Yep, that's okay. Now I'm going to scrape. So we've come up here. I'll scrape it in. Oof, baby, look at that. Couldn't be happier. Right, scraping in again. Do I love this? I don't know. I'm going to do a couple more stitches, continue down here and see what I get. I'm trying to tell myself, calm down, Crystal, don't scrape quite so much. Right, gentle scraping on the chiffon. Oh, I'm going to run out of thread. That's very annoying. Yeah, I'll keep going. This is a little bit in a straight line here for me. Maybe I should have moved it over, but I've only got a little bit of thread left, just enough to do my French knot and get back up. Don't leave yourself 1 centimeter of thread if you want to do a French knot and finish it. I always don't worry about wasting thread. It's just get over it is what I'm trying to say. Always leave students like constantly after all these years of teaching that it must be a human nature thing not to waste because they get to the end of their thread, which is half or a quarter of the length of their needle, and they say to me, I ran out of thread. It's like, yeah, well, you can't fix that. I don't have a magic wand, so you're going to have to undo the last couple of stitches so that you've got some enough thread to finish off. All right, I think I'm going to come in here. So I'll come out here to do my first little anchoring stitch, and I am actually going through the fabric. Now I don't want to scrape this one in very much at all. So I just want a really gentle little tuck in there. Yes, that's nice. I love this. Really, I don't want to stitch that very much at all, but I have to because I can't have it flapping around in the breeze, especially if it's going on a garment. So again, a very gentle tuck in there. And then I think we're going to have to scrape that in just a tad so that we get a nice point. No, don't like that. It's coming out. Taking my needle back to the wrong side of the fabric so that I can reassess. See, I really don't want to stitch that much at all. So I think what I'll do instead is I'll come up in here where I had that lovely roll, but it is quite a big roll. Now here I'm auditioning before I stitch. I'm trying to work out, I don't love this big fold here. So I'm trying to stitch in the middle of it to flatten it out, which worked beautifully. All right, now I could anchor that down, or I could leave it free form. I'm going to anchor it. If it was textile art, I wouldn't anchor it. Oh, well, actually, let's talk about that. If this was a textile art piece that was going to be wall art or go on a bag or something else, then I wouldn't anchor it. If it's going on a garment, I would, because you can't have big floppy pieces like this on a garment. This is borderline. I could leave it or I could tuck it in. I'm going to tuck it in. So you have to also find that balance between artistic expression and practicality. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, now I'm going to have something up here stitch-wise for exactly the same reasons. So what I'm wondering is, if problem solved, right? I did a turn. I'm going to do, this is where I love my 121 Gutermann because it is just going to blend and you are barely going to see that stitch. Voila! I am happy with that. Right, let's finish off with a French knot. Come back up and cut my thread. Okay, so now we have to stand back, have a look at what we've created, and do a bit of troubleshooting as well, because I've got this bit that's flapping in the breeze that can't stay like that. And I've got a really big bump here, which frankly I quite love and feel that I'm going to leave. Always remember that when this piece gets handled or worn on a garment, it will flatten down naturally anyway. I'm going to do the same thing here because I love the way that's twisting. Can you see there's a roll on this edge of the fabric? My stitch is right inside of that roll so that you can't even see it. Nobody will know it's there, but it's just anchored that down. And I think I'm going to have to jump over here and do a scraping edge stitch because that can't sustain itself once the piece is not in a hoop and hanging up the correct way. And I'm going to do another one here. These are just practical. I can leave that. I better do one here. This one's going to just be my French knot because I don't even really want to scrape that. I just want to finish, tack it down and finish my thread off. All right. I'm loving it. Loving it, loving it, loving it. So now I assess again. I've got all this area left. Do I continue with the chiffon and now make some, side petals going like bottom petals more than anything? would look. I haven't got much of this fabric left. So it would look, you know, something like that. Do I go back to this fabric? Actually, I think I like that better. Tie some of that in, maybe 2 or 3 petals at the bottom. Or do I leave it? You know, do I create a, if I was going to create a stem, which I don't feel I am for this one, I would just twist the pale green organza and stitch it on. You can even leave the end and then cut that and create leaves with it. I can just do some random shape in the green. You can pull it in and you could start, you know, creating some leaf shapes on there as well. I feel that I'm going to go back to this fabric. Now, this is a bit interesting. When I ripped my silk, this one ripped a very narrow strip in a straight line. Normally, especially for bottom petals, I would use the wider one because by the time you sculpt that, it's going to end up too thin. So I'll keep this for buds and other things in the future. And I'm going to come back here. I am going to cut it like that. I do want, oh, maybe I don't need a V. Maybe I can just cut it like that. All right, so that's the shape I'm starting with. You can see it's bigger than the last one because I've decided I want these bottom petals larger. Ooh, I maybe should have thought about that because I was thinking I want 3, but really I've only, if I want 2 that size, I actually haven't got enough of that fabric in the correct width. So that's okay. Sometimes I have found having too much fabric to choose from, too many beads, you know, I call it my palette. If there's too much choice on my palette, I generally don't use half of what I've put out. I'm lucky over the years I've collected an immense amount of materials and beads. Now I'm just having a good look at this one, deciding which side I will use. And maybe this comes down to how much sparkle I want. There's a little bit more sparkle I feel on this side, or whether it's the color that I choose. All right, so this side is lighter, and then goes down to the darker. This one would be darker at the top and go down to the light. And for some reason, I just feel that I'm going to do it there. All right, now this one I'm absolutely starting right here at this point because now I do want these bottom petals to look like they're coming from the apex of this flower. And again, I'm going to stitch it upside down. I'm going to scrape in from the side. I'm going to come up in the same hole. I'm going to scrape in from the side and pop it forward. All right, let's start. Let's see what we get. You can decide how much puff you want there. You know, I could leave it really puffed up, or I think I'm just going to calm it down a little bit and have a gentle puff. I'm calling this page, but it's actually quite a little bit thicker than the normal page. So I honestly don't remember quite what it was, but it's not super fine and certainly not like the I'm just going to start with a gentle scrape. Already don't like that. It wasn't feeling right to me before I did it. So use your intuition. Try, obviously, engage your brain because it's there to help you, but try and feel into it. Sometimes when I get into the flow of sculpting, I really am not thinking, I'm not over planning, I'm not overthinking. I am just intuitively stitching and scraping where I feel that I want to. And generally, that works really well for me. It's why I don't use the pins anymore, like I showed you at the beginning. Okay, don't like that. It needs to come up and out here. Could have had a bit of a longer thread because I'm going to run out of cotton. All right, this is looking good. I want it to curl kind of over this way. So let's scrape here. Jumping out to the edge. And I'm going to do an edge to edge. Yep, I like that. Now you can see I'm going to run out of hoop space. I'm going to come back in here on the other side of that big fold. I like that. I get super fast at this once, like I'm slowing down because I'm talking to you and trying to explain what I'm doing. But when I get into the flow, oh yeah, baby. When I get into the flow of this, I don't stitch fast or do anything in life fast, but this is probably one of the fastest forms of embroidery that I do get into the flow with because I'm trying to avoid that overthinking thing. I'm a Gemini, so there's always the overthinking thing going on, or the two choices. Should I do it this way? Should I do it that way? Now I'm going to leave that hanging there just for the moment. I want a little bit of a longer thread this time because I don't quite know what I'm going to do. I have got enough fabric here. I might need to take that off of the hoop, reposition the hoop to finish it. But I want to see what the next petal is going to look like before I make those kind of decisions. Now, I really wanted 3 petals because 2 petals is going to make it look like an iris, and I don't want a dusty pink iris. So I'm a bit stuffed. So what I might do is cut this one like that. All right, so I've got angles. I'm going to fray it here on the bias edge. And I'm going to be super brave. Am I? I'm thinking, will I cut an edge off of this so that I've already got a nice random shape? I've got a very straight edge to pull in, and I am because I just feel that that's going to work better for me. All right. Where's my thread? Okay. So starting here, and if you get a little bit of a gap in the middle, it doesn't matter because we will embellish that at the apex of the flower. 9 out of 10 times I'll embellish that with beads or sequins. Okay, here's the point where I want to start. And again, scraping from the edge, going down into that same hole, coming up in the same hole here, edge to edge, going down into my fabric, flipping that forward. Let's see what we can create. Looking at the composition, right? I'm definitely, in fact, let's just do that right now. I need to move my hoop down a little. This is a really old hoop that I used to use for tambour, and the screw doesn't really work anymore, but it's still firm enough for this kind of work. So if you're curious as to why I'm not unscrewing it, that is why. Right, let's scrape that in there. That's too far. And I don't like these. This looks like a pair of eyes, these two dark marks. Don't worry about it if your fabric's got some weird markings on it, because you can get rid of them when you sculpt your fabric. Just be mindful about, if you need to hide one of those eyes, then scrape it in that spot. I get all sorts of weird results from when I paint the scraps, and there's very rarely anything that I can't use. Everything's generally usable. All right, so I'm free flowing now, just stitching where I think I want to, seeing what I get, calming down with my scrapings because I haven't got as much length in this one as I have in that one. And actually for the middle petal, that might work quite right. Now see, I've got this big roll here that's got to go. So I'm trying to get in the middle of that so that I get an even better different shape. All right, this is something I haven't showed you because this is thicker that fabric and I've really scrunched that in, scraped that in. I'm going to do a second anchoring stitch. Now you might find you need to do that. Some of my students do, depending on the fabric, because there's quite a lot bunched up there and it's just holding it nicely. Now I don't like this straight edge here. One, I can fray it to soften the edge, which I definitely want to do. Ooh, this is fraying in a very strange but interesting way that I like. So that's softened that up, and now I'm just going to come back in here, do a little edge tuck so that that gives that a little bit of interest, and I'm going to leave this. I'm taking that out. I'm not sure I even want that stitch there. Something has to happen here. Oh, that's actually better. All right, let's do that instead. Okay, so taking my needle down, reassessing. I think that looked better pushed up that way. But I want that roll scraped. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so pulling that up. All right, doing a French knot there because I'm going to leave everything on that petal as it is for the moment. Clearly stitching needs to be done down here and on over here, but I am going to start the next one so that I am almost working my 3 bottom petals at once. Clearly I'm not, but I'm not putting the final stitches on any of these bottom petals until I see how they relate to the next petal. Now, I don't want to start my next petal here because this might get pulled in. So I'm pushing my fabrics back and I'm getting a little bit closer to the apex of the flower in the center in order to start this next one. I'm starting it in here. I'm scraping it into the side. I'm coming up in the center and I'm scraping the other side. All right, let the sculpting begin. First thing I'm going to do, because I've got a bias edge here, is I'm going to fray it. Because I don't love those straight edges there. And sometimes when I fray it, then I don't need to stitch it. Okay, let's begin. I've got a little bit of a selvage there, which isn't very pleasing to me. Already that felt wrong. Taking that out. If it feels wrong, don't worry about reversing. Just take it out. It doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't damage the thread. It doesn't damage the fabric. It's, oh, well, it will on chiffon if you've got a very fine chiffon, but just be gentle with it and you can take it out a couple of times if you need to. Okay, taking my needle down to the wrong side, having a go. Let's do a bit of auditioning here. I want a bit of a puff. Right, scrape that. Not scrape, or loop that edge. Yeah, that's better. Can you see the difference? I just didn't like the way the fabric was behaving with that first stitch. I came back and did it again, and now it just feels better, looks better. So trust your intuition. Doesn't feel right, if it doesn't look right, undo it. It's no big deal. All right, now I'm trying to kind of push the fabric in the direction that I'm feeling I want my petals to sit. I'm going to run out of thread. And I'm going to have to stop there because of the thread situation, but I like it. It's good. Gives me a little bit of guidance for that one. This has actually been a really good teaching video because I haven't got another piece of fabric that I could cut again, or a larger piece of fabric. So it's good for you to learn and see how I navigate situations where I haven't got enough fabric. It's still looking like a giant iris now to me, which is not what I had in mind. But you know, with fabric sculpting, sometimes the fabric just has a life of its own. I'm always delighted with what I get. It's just, I should call it, you know, organic fabric sculpting, flower sculpting, because you really don't actually know what you're going to get each time. All right, jumping back up to this edge that needs securing. That's good. Yeah, I think I'm going to actually pull this one in a little bit more because I do want it to look more, less iris-like. That makes sense. Looping over the edge because I really want to tuck that in. See how that changes the shape. All right, more fraying required for this edge, and it's a straight edge, so it's not going to fray that well. Oh, it's okay. A little bit. Oh, this one's going nicely. I like that. All right, I'm going to do one anchoring stitch here. Very happy with that last petal. Then I'm going to jump back here. I don't need another stitch here, but I can't jump from here to here. So it's just, I call it a walking stitch. I'm walking my way back over here where I do need to do another stitch. All right, we require some fraying here. And just a little anchoring stitch. Yep, super happy with that. I am going to finish that thread off with a French knot once again. Up, because I'm not going here. I'm going to jump over here. I am not loving this bit at all. That's going to have to completely change shape. But before I do that, I'm going to jump over to this first side petal to see how I'm going to finish that off. My thread had ended up double because I hadn't been pulling it from the wrong side. So I'm just making it single again. And before I start, I'm going to fray this edge. and this edge. It's interesting that the paint that I used on this one is obviously making the fabric behave a little differently with its fraying. All right, let's tuck that one in just a little bit there. I love the way that's sitting, but it's going to need an anchoring stitch. So I'm just creating, I don't really want to change the shape. I'm just grabbing a few fibers towards the end. Here is another walking stitch. Right, I'm just going in the same space as I was before because I don't want to change the shape of anything there. And then here on this edge, I do need to pull this in. There's a looping edge stitch. And this big thing here has to change somehow. I'm going to scrape that up and in because I need to differentiate it between the middle petal. And then I've got a fabric fold there that is not pleasing to me. So coming up in the middle, squashing it down, jumping all the way over here, which is probably a little bit naughty, but I'm on a roll, so I did it anyway. That's good. That's super good. All right, and now jumping to the edge. I'm looking at the way this edge is falling down into a point, and I want this not jutting out in the opposite direction. I want to encourage it to sit in a nice curve. So I'm just doing that now. Where's my point? And then I'm going to come up and do my French knot right there. I'm too close to the edge of my hoop here and I'm knocking the hoop underneath. So something in tambour is we always have a 10 centimeter area around. I'm going to rethread that. I probably had enough, but I don't want to get to the last stitch and run out because that always really pisses me off, to be frank. Yeah, so you can work right to the edge in a round hoop, even though it's a bit tricky. And because I bind my hoops with cotton tape, I've accidentally sewn underneath to the cotton tape and then turned it over or couldn't get it out. And it's like, why won't my sample piece come out? All right, let's fix this bit up here with some scraping, some aggressive scraping, because I need to change the shape of that. And then I want to bring this one down here. So this fold here needs to change. So I'm undoing it, coming up, scraping up. Don't know if I like that, but we'll find out with the next one. This was the piece of fabric that's really a little bit too short. So I've got to try and scrape it in a way, oh yeah, where I maintain this point because that's the length that I need. So if that happens to you where you've run out of thread, run out of fabric and you're a little bit limited, just don't scrape and stitch away. Mindfully work out how you're going to get the piece of fabric that you've got to be in balance with everything else. I think that's quite nice. Now I'm going to do a final pass. So I've got 3 petals here. They almost kind of look like they've gone into one big petal, which I don't mind at all. I'm wondering if this needs to anchor down, if this needs to anchor down, but you know what? I'm going to stop myself. And one of the questions my students ask me with sculpting is like, how do I know when I'm finished? My answer is you feel it, number one, or you see it. So if I take the hoop off and you put it vertical, like, is anything flapping around? No, it's not. Okay, it's all, there's enough stitches there to make that practical when it's hanging correctly. So I don't have to, because sometimes when you pull it up like that, there will be bits that flop down and then you can see. I do think maybe this one needs, maybe a little bit of an anchoring stitch here. But with all of my artwork, whether it's painting, drawing, or embroidery, when I'm not sure or when I've kind of, how can I explain this? I feel in my body when the creative flow has just run out of energy, and I feel that now. So instead of continuing this video and doing leaves or doing the embellishing, I'm going to stop. And I often will leave it overnight. I'll pop this up somewhere where I'm walking past it during the day. I'll let it talk to me. I'll let it inform me. And then I'll decide if I need more changes, or in the next video when you join me, I'll be doing the embellishing here in the center. I'll decide if I'm going to embellish anywhere else. Um, Tomorrow or the day after or a week later when I come back to this, I might have had a completely different idea. Maybe I would add some silk ribbon into the center. I'm having a real silk ribbon thing at the moment again. Maybe I would do some whole sequin petals or sequin and beaded leaves in tambour and then sculpt them on the top. Who knows? So don't rush. It depends on your personality, your temperament, how you work. I work slow. I like to give my work space to breathe in between sessions. I don't rush to finish everything all at once because on different days you have different creative energy, different creative ideas, and it's about the process. Yes, you get this beautiful finished piece at the end, but don't rush it. Allow the piece to talk to you, allow it to tell you. If you look at your piece and you can't tell if you're finished or not, look at it back to front in a mirror. That's always helpful. Or I just ask the piece, what do you want? I literally interview the piece, say, do you want more petals? No, clearly this one doesn't. Petal wise, we're good. Does it want leaves? I'm thinking maybe not. But I'm done for the day. I can feel my creative flow. That energy has exhausted itself. And so I'm going to close that channel off now, go do something else, look at this and let it inform me of the next step. So I hope you join me in the next video where you can see how I'm going to embellish it and where the creative energy takes me with this one. Okay, thanks for joining me, and I hope that this was inspiring and informative and helps your skill in couture embroidery grow and expand into the beautiful, authentic artisan that I know you are.